The porcelain vase seemed to hang in the air for an eternal moment before it exploded against the cold marble floor, shards scattering like frozen tears across the pristine surface. The sharp crack of breaking china echoed through the grand foyer, followed immediately by a roar that made the crystal chandeliers tremble. "Do you know what this cost?" Jae-Hwa Lee's voice was thunder incarnate as he towered over Nia Carter, his sharp black suit somehow making him appear even more menacing. His fingers wrapped around her arm like iron shackles, jerking her backward with such force that she stumbled, nearly losing her footing on the treacherous fragments. "You are worthless!" Nia's tears fell freely now, hot against her cheeks as her body shook. "I'm sorry, sir, please." Her voice broke on the last word, dissolving into sobs that seemed to shrink her even smaller in her plain black uniform. The shadows in the doorway shifted almost imperceptibly. Hai-Jin Lee stood motionless at the threshold, her gray hair gleaming in the harsh light, one hand gripping her cane while the other clutched the doorframe. Though her eyes saw nothing, her head tilted with the precise attention of someone who had learned to paint entire scenes from sound alone. Every cruel syllable, every choked sob, every tremor of fear, she absorbed it all, her expression unreadable as stone. Does money give him the right to treat her like trash? What would you do? Like, comment, and subscribe, because what happens next will shock you. The mansion loomed before Nia like a fortress carved from ice and ambition. Twin iron gates swung open with a groan that seemed to echo her own reluctance, revealing a driveway that stretched endlessly toward towering marble columns. Everything gleamed, the windows, the pristine hedges trimmed into geometric perfection. Even the stones beneath her worn shoes seemed to catch light and throw it back with cruel brilliance. She clutched her small duffel bag tighter, feeling impossibly small as she approached the entrance. The double doors were easily twice her height, dark wood polished to a mirror finish. Before she could knock, they opened to reveal a woman in her 50s, hair pulled back so severely it seemed to stretch her face into a permanent expression of disapproval. "You're late," the woman said, though Nia had arrived exactly on time. "I'm Mrs. Kwan. Follow me." The foyer swallowed them whole. Nia's footsteps echoed against marble floors that stretched in every direction, disappearing into rooms she couldn't see. A chandelier the size of a car hung overhead, its crystals tinkling softly like wind chimes made of diamonds. Everything was white or black or chrome. No warmth, no color, no sign that actual human beings lived here. Mrs. Kwan thrust a leather folder into Nia's hands. "The rules. Memorize them tonight." Nia's fingers trembled as she opened it. The list went on for pages. No speaking unless spoken to, no using the front stairs, no touching any artwork, no entering the master wing, no phone calls during work hours, no... "I don't expect you to last," Mrs. Kwan said flatly. "The last 3 girls didn't make it past 2 weeks." A voice cut through the cavernous space, sharp, commanding, speaking rapid Korean into a phone. Nia turned to see him for the first time. Jae-Hwa Lee stood silhouetted against floor-to-ceiling windows, one hand in his pocket, the other gripping his phone like a weapon. Even from a distance, his presence filled the room, pushing out all the air. "I don't care what the board thinks," he snapped into the phone. "Fire them, all of them. Have the new contracts on my desk by morning." He paced like a caged predator, his Italian shoes clicking against marble. His eyes swept past Nia as if she were part of the furniture, less than furniture perhaps, just another object in his collection of expensive, interchangeable things. Mrs. Kwan's voice dropped to a whisper. "Rule number 1, which isn't written down, stay out of his way. He doesn't like to remember that staff exist." Nia watched him through the doorway, this man who would control every aspect of her life for the foreseeable future, and felt the golden cage door swing shut behind her. The east wing hallway seemed to stretch into infinity, each identical door a mirror of the last. Nia's knees ached from scrubbing the baseboards, white marble that showed every speck of dust, every fingerprint, as if the house itself was designed to expose imperfection. Her bucket of soapy water had gone cold an hour ago, but she didn't dare stop. Mrs. Kwan had made it clear that adequate wasn't good enough in this house. A soft clatter made her look up. Through an open doorway, she could see into a sitting room bathed in afternoon light. Hye-jin Lee sat at a small table, her gray hair swept back in an elegant knot. Her hands, graceful but trembling slightly, hovered over a tea service, fingers searching for the teapot handle. She found it, gripped it carefully, then began to tilt. The angle was all wrong. Nia watched the teapot tip further, the spout aimed at the table's edge rather than the delicate porcelain cup. Hot liquid would spill everywhere, scald those fragile hands, shatter the cup. Without thinking, Nia dropped her rag and moved. She crossed the threshold silently, her footsteps absorbed by the thick Persian rug. Her hand covered Hye-jin's gently, guiding the teapot over the cup, adjusting the angle until amber liquid poured in a perfect stream. Steam rose between them, carrying the scent of jasmine. Hye-jin went completely still. Then her free hand lifted, fingers finding Nia's wrist, then her hand, tracing the contours as if reading Braille. Her touch was warm, searching, surprisingly strong. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Hye-jin's sightless eyes seemed to look directly through Nia, into some place words couldn't reach. "What is going on here?" The voice cracked like a whip. Jawa stood in the doorway, his sharp black suit stark against the soft-lit room. His eyes, cold and assessing, moved from his mother to Nia with the same calculating distance. Nia jerked her hand back, nearly knocking over the teacup. "Mother, I've told you not to bother the help." He crossed the room in 3 strides, his presence somehow make the space feel smaller, darker. "Mrs. Kwan handles your tea service." "I didn't ask," Hye-jin began, her voice quiet but firm. "You don't need to ask. They see you struggling and feel obligated." He turned to Nia, his gaze cutting through her. "Back to work. My mother is not your concern." Nia nodded mutely, backing toward the door. But just before she turned, she caught Hye-jin's expression, lips pressed together, head tilted slightly as if listening to something beyond the words. The older woman's hands had folded in her lap, fingers intertwined, gripping each other with a tension that spoke volumes. As Nia returned to her bucket and rag, she could hear Jae-wha's voice, softer now but no less controlling. "You know the rules, mother. Everyone has their place." Hye-jin's bedroom existed in a different world from the rest of the mansion. Where the other rooms gleamed with cold perfection, this space held whispers of warmth. A hand-embroidered silk screen in the corner, photographs in silver frames arranged on the dresser, a wooden music box whose paint had worn soft with age. The afternoon sun filtered through sheer curtains, turning dust motes into floating stars. Nia had been told to dust the bookshelves while Hye-jin took her afternoon rest. The older woman lay perfectly still on the chaise lounge near the window, a thin blanket tucked around her legs, her breathing deep and even. Nia worked quietly, her cloth moving in gentle circles across the spines of books written in Korean and English, their titles speaking of poetry and philosophy and distant places. The melody came without thought, rising from some deep place in her chest where memory lived. A lullaby her grandmother had sung, the notes low and soulful, each one rounded with longing and love. "Hush now, little bird, the night is long. Mama's here to keep you warm. Dream of morning, dream of light." Nia's voice was barely above a whisper, more breath than sound, but in the quiet room it seemed to fill every corner. Her hands moved in rhythm with the tune, dustcloth swaying like a conductor's baton as she hummed the verses she'd forgotten the words to. She didn't notice when Hye-jin's breathing changed. The older woman's eyes flew open, unseeing but suddenly alert, focused on nothing and everything at once. Her head turned sharply toward the sound, tilted at an angle that spoke of desperate listening. Her fingers clutched the blanket, knuckles going white as she pulled herself upright with shocking urgency. Nia's humming stopped mid-phrase. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to—" But He-jin wasn't listening to apologies. She leaned forward, her whole body straining toward where Nia stood frozen by the bookshelf. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. One trembling hand lifted, reaching out to the melody that had vanished. "Sing it again," He-jin whispered, her voice cracking with something that might have been tears or wonder or both. "Please, that song." Nia stood paralyzed, dust cloth hanging forgotten in her hand. There was something in He-jin's expression she couldn't name, recognition mixed with disbelief, hope tangled with fear. The older woman's sightless eyes glistened with unshed tears, her breathing shallow and quick. "Where did you learn that song?" He-jin's question came out barely audible, each word weighted with decades of something Nia couldn't begin to understand. The afternoon sun shifted, casting He-jin's shadow long across the floor, reaching toward Nia like hands grasping for something lost. The front door slammed with enough force to rattle the chandelier. Nia felt it in her bones from 2 floors up, that concussive sound that meant trouble had entered the house. She pressed herself closer to the window she'd been cleaning in the gallery, cloth moving in smaller, more careful circles. Heavy footsteps echoed through the marble halls below, sharp, irregular, the rhythm of barely contained rage. A briefcase hit something solid. Then silence, which was somehow worse. "Where is everyone?" Jaewa's voice boomed from the foyer, ricocheting off walls designed to amplify beauty, but now weaponizing fury. "Mrs. Kwan!" Nia's hands trembled. She could hear him moving through the house, his expensive shoes striking marble like hammer blows. A door crashed open, another. He was hunting. She worked faster, trying to erase every streak, every fingerprint, every molecule of imperfection from the glass. Almost done, just a few more. "You!" She spun around. Jaewa stood in the gallery entrance, his suit jacket gone, tie loosened, hair slightly disheveled in a way that made him look unhinged rather than casual. His eyes were predator bright, scanning the room with mechanical precision until they locked onto her, then shifted to the window behind her. Nia's stomach dropped. There, in the late afternoon light, a single smudge near the bottom corner, barely visible. She'd been about to wipe it away. He crossed the distance between them in 4 long strides. Up close, she could smell whiskey on his breath, see the muscle twitching in his jaw. He towered over her, and from this angle, her back pressed against the window, him blocking out the light, he seemed impossibly large, monstrous. "Do you see this?" His finger jabbed toward the smudge, stopping inches from the glass. "Do you?" "I see it, sir. I don't pay you to almost finish." His voice was low now, controlled in a way that was more terrifying than shouting. "I pay you to be invisible, to leave no trace, to make everything perfect." He leaned closer, forcing her to crane her neck back to meet his eyes. "Instead, I come home after losing a $15 million contract to find your incompetence smeared across my windows." "I'm sorry. I'll fix it right." "Sorry?" The word exploded from him. His hand slammed against the window beside her, making her flinch. "Sorry doesn't restore my investment. Sorry doesn't impress clients. Sorry is what useless people say when they fail." Nia's eyes burned, but she refused to let tears fall. Not here, not in front of him. "Look at me when I'm speaking to you." She forced her gaze upward. His face was twisted with contempt, lips curled back almost in a snarl. This had never been about the window. This had never been about the window. "One more mistake," he said, each word deliberate. Just one, and you're gone. The gallery stretched endlessly behind her as Nia stumbled backward, her cleaning supplies forgotten on the floor. Jawa followed, his presence pushing her retreat like a physical force, his finger still stabbing the air with each word. "Do you understand what excellence means?" His voice climbed higher. "Do you even comprehend the standards of this household?" "Yes, sir, I understand." Nia's heel caught on the leg of a display pedestal. She twisted, arms windmilling for balance. Her elbow connected with something solid, a flash of blue and white, an antique vase teetering on its stand. Time seemed to fracture. She watched her hand reach for it, knowing she was too far, too slow, too late. The vase hit the marble floor. The sound was catastrophic, porcelain exploding into 1,000 pieces, shards scattering across the floor like frozen tears. In the cavernous space, each fragment's impact echoed and re-echoed, a symphony of destruction that seemed to go on forever. Nia stood frozen, staring at the wreckage at her feet. Blue dragons and white clouds, now nothing but razor-edged memories scattered across pristine marble. "Do you know what this cost?" Jaehwa's roar made her flinch. Before she could move, his hand clamped around her upper arm like a vice, fingers digging into muscle hard enough to bruise. He jerked her toward him, then shoved her backward with shocking violence. Nia's feet tangled in her own ankles. The world tilted, spun. She hit the floor hard, her hip cracking against marble, her palms shredding on porcelain fragments as she tried to catch herself. Pain exploded up her side, white-hot and breathtaking. "You are worthless!" He loomed over her, backlit by the chandelier, a monster made of shadow and fury. "Absolutely worthless!" "I'm sorry, sir, please." The words tore from her throat between sobs. Blood welled from her palms where the shards had cut deep. Her arm throbbed where his fingers had been. Everything hurt. Her body, her pride, the place inside her chest where hope used to live. She curled into herself on the cold floor, tears streaming down her face, mixing with the dust and broken porcelain. Her shoulders shook with sobs she couldn't control anymore. All the fear, all the exhaustion, all the desperate need for this job that kept her returning day after day to this beautiful, terrible cage, it all came pouring out. Above her, Jaehwa's breathing was ragged, his polished shoes just inches from her bleeding hands. Neither of them noticed the shadow in the doorway. Hyujin stood motionless at the threshold, her gray hair gleaming in the harsh light, one hand gripping her cane while the other clutched the doorframe. Her head tilted, listening with the fierce attention of someone painting entire worlds from sound alone. Every cruel word, every choked sob, every tremor of injustice, she heard it all. He just crossed the line. Do you think justice will prevail for Nia? Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe if you're hooked. Stop! The word cut through the gallery like a blade, sharp and absolute. Hyujin's voice, so quiet until now, so carefully controlled, rang with an authority that made even Jaehwa freeze. She moved forward with surprising speed, her cane striking marble in rapid beats that somehow avoided every scattered piece of porcelain. Her free hand swept the air before her, fingers splayed, searching. Her gray hair had come loose from its pins, strands falling across her face as she navigated by sound alone. The ragged breathing, the quiet sobs, the precise location of suffering. "Mother, go back to your room. This doesn't concern—" I said, "Stop." Hyujin didn't raise her voice this time. She didn't need to. Something in her tone carried the weight of decades, of choices made and unmade, of authority that had nothing to do with sight. Step away from her. Now. Jaehwa's jaw tightened, but he moved back. Just one step, but enough. Hyujin dropped to her knees beside Nia with a grace that belied her age and blindness. Her cane clattered to the floor, forgotten. Both hands reached out, hovering over the sobbing girl like a benediction, searching for permission to touch. "It's all right," Hai-Jin whispered. "I'm here. You're safe." Nia's breath hitched, her whole body trembling. "Please, don't—" The words dissolved into a sob. Hai-Jin's fingers found Nia's face with infinite gentleness. They traced her cheekbones, her jaw, the tears that streamed hot and endless down her skin. The older woman's expression shifted with each discovery. The wetness, the trembling, the shape of fear made manifest. Her thumbs brushed across Nia's cheeks, collecting tears, learning the geography of pain. Then her hands stilled. Hai-Jin's breath caught audibly. Her fingers moved again, more deliberately now, tracing the curve of Nia's nose, the line of her brow, the slope of her chin, reading features like braille, like scripture, like something remembered from a dream that refused to fade even after waking. "Your voice," Hai-Jin breathed, her own hands beginning to shake. "The lullaby. Your face." Her fingers continued their exploration, gentle but urgent, disbelieving. "How old are you, child?" 23, Nia managed through her tears. The color drained from Hai-Jin's face. Her hands cupped Nia's cheeks fully now, thumbs still tracing, still searching for confirmation of something impossible. Her sightless eyes glistened, brimming with tears that had nothing to do with the violence she'd interrupted. "Mother, what are you—" Jaewa's voice held a note of uncertainty now. But Hai-Jin wasn't listening. Her whole world had narrowed to the face beneath her hands, to the voice that sang forgotten lullabies, to the impossible arithmetic of years and loss and providence. "Tell me your full name," she whispered. "Please, tell me your full name." "Nia Carter," she whispered, confusion mixing with pain. "My name is Nia Carter." Hai-Jin's hands trembled violently against Nia's face. A sound escaped her throat, half laugh, half sob, as tears spilled freely down her own cheeks now. "It's you," she breathed. "The girl from the subway." The words hung in the air like suspended notes from a forgotten song. "What are you talking about?" Jaewa's voice had lost its sharp edge, uncertainty creeping in. But Hai-Jin was somewhere else entirely, lost in memory that had lived behind her sightless eyes for 7 years. The subway platform had been chaos incarnate, rush hour crowds surging past like a river around a stone. Hai-Jin had collapsed against the cold tile wall, her newly blind eyes seeing nothing but gray shadows, her body racked with fever that made the world spin even in darkness. She'd been diagnosed only months before. The treatment had failed. Jaewa was still struggling, still climbing, too busy building his empire to notice her mother was dying alone. People rushed past. She could hear them, thousands of footsteps, conversations, laughter. But no one stopped. Why would they? She was just another problem in a city full of problems. Then, soft footsteps, stopping. "Ma'am, are you okay?" A young voice, a girl, maybe 16 or 17. Hai-Jin felt gentle hands on her shoulders, steadying her. "I'm going to get you some water. Don't move, okay?" The girl returned quickly, cool plastic pressed against Hai-Jin's lips, water, blessed and cold, trickling down her parched throat. Then a soft cloth, someone's scarf maybe, dabbing at her fevered face with infinite tenderness. "It's all right," the girl whispered. "You're going to be okay. I've got you." And then she hummed, that melody, low and soulful, ancient and comforting, the same lullaby that had filled the bedroom weeks ago. The girl hummed and wiped Hai-Jin's face and held her hand until the paramedics arrived, until help came, until Hai-Jin wasn't alone anymore. Hai-Jin had tried to thank her, to ask her name, but the fever had pulled her under. When she woke in the hospital, the girl was gone, vanished like an angel who'd completed her mission. "You stayed with me," Jin said now, her voice breaking. "You missed your train. You gave me your scarf. You sang to me until I wasn't afraid anymore." Nia's eyes widened with recognition. "The woman in the blue coat," she whispered. That was you." Jaehua stood frozen, his face draining of color as the pieces assembled themselves into an unbearable picture. This girl, this worthless maid he'd just brutalized, had saved his mother's life when he'd been too consumed with ambition to even notice she was suffering. His hands, still clenched at his sides, began to shake. Jin rose to her feet with deliberate precision, her hand finding her cane on the floor. She turned toward where Jaehua stood, her sightless eyes unerring in their aim, as if she could see straight through to his soul. The cane swung in a sharp arc. It cracked against Jaehua's shin, not hard enough to injure, but sharp enough to sting, to shock, to shame. He stumbled back, eyes wide with disbelief. His mother had never struck him, not once in his entire life. "Mother!" The cane rose again, pointing at his chest like an accusation made solid. "Do you remember that day?" Her voice was steel wrapped in ice. 7 years ago, November 15th, when I called you 14 times from the hospital. Jaehua's face went ashen. "I was alone, sick, terrified. The doctors said I might not make it through the night." Jin's hand trembled on the cane, but her voice never wavered. "And where were you, my son, my only child?" "I was closing the Hanwha deal." "You were too busy." Each word landed like a stone. "Too important, too consumed with building your empire to answer your dying mother's calls." She took a step toward him, and he, this man who commanded boardrooms, who fired executives with a word, who made grown men tremble, retreated. But she wasn't too busy. This girl you just threw to the floor like garbage. She stopped. She stayed. She saved my life when my own son couldn't be bothered. The cane struck the floor between them with a sharp crack that echoed through the gallery. "Look at her," Jin commanded. "Look at what you've done." Jaehua's eyes moved to Nia, still crumpled on the floor among the shattered porcelain, blood seeping from her palms, her uniform torn, tears streaming down her face. But now he saw something else, the tilt of her head, the shape of kindness in her features, the echo of a 16-year-old girl holding his mother's hand in a subway station while he'd been 70 floors up, too important to answer the phone. His legs gave out. Jaehua sank to his knees among the broken vase, the sharp edges cutting through his expensive trousers, pressing into his skin. He lowered himself until he was eye level with Nia, his perfectly constructed facade crumbling like the porcelain scattered between them. "I didn't know," he whispered, his voice cracking. "I didn't—" The words died in his throat. What could he possibly say? What apology could bridge the chasm between the man he'd become and the son he should have been, between the monster who'd hurt her and the debt he could never repay? His hands hung useless at his sides, no longer weapons but instruments of shame. "I'm sorry," he finally managed, the words inadequate and true. "God help me, I'm so sorry." Sunlight poured through the dining room windows, painting everything gold. The room that had once felt like a mausoleum now seemed almost welcoming, the long mahogany table no longer a barrier but a bridge. Fresh flowers, pale pink peonies, sat in a simple vase at its center, their fragrance sweetening the air. Nia sat in one of the high-backed chairs, wearing a soft lavender dress that Jin had insisted on buying for her. No more black uniform, no more invisible servitude. Her hands, bandaged but healing, rested on the table as she listened to Jin tell stories about her childhood in Busan, about the sea and the markets, and a world that existed before marble floors and crystal chandeliers. The door opened quietly. Jaiwa entered carrying a tea service, the same delicate porcelain his mother favored, jasmine steam curling from the pot's spout. He'd traded his sharp suit for a simple sweater and slacks. His movements were careful, almost hesitant, as if he were learning a new language with his body. He approached the table and began to pour. First Heijin's cup, the angle perfect, the stream steady. Then Nia's. His hands didn't shake, but there was a concentration in his movements that spoke of practice, of choosing to do this right. "Thank you," Nia said softly. Jaiwa met her eyes briefly. "It's the least I can do." His voice carried none of its former command, just quiet sincerity and the weight of awareness. He bowed, a genuine gesture of respect, before turning to leave. "Jaiwa," Heijin called out. He paused at the doorway. "We'll need more tea in about an hour." "Of course, Mother." A ghost of a smile touched his lips, sad but real. "I'll bring fresh cookies as well." The door closed softly behind him. Heijin reached across the table, her fingers finding Nia's hand with the ease of growing familiarity. "He's learning," she said, slowly, but he's learning. Nia squeezed back gently, mindful of her healing palms. "We all are, I think." Through the window, spring blossoms danced on branches that had been bare just weeks ago. The mansion felt different now. Not warm, perhaps, not yet, but warmer, like a house remembering how to become a home. Haijin lifted her teacup, and Nia did the same. The delicate clink of porcelain on porcelain rang like a bell, like a promise, like the beginning of something neither of them had dared to hope for. Outside, birds sang. Inside, two women who'd found each other across the chaos of years and subway platforms and impossible chance sat together in comfortable silence, drinking tea in the sunlight. Kindness always circles back in the end. Have you ever helped a stranger who remembered you? Thanks for watching. Like, comment your thoughts, and subscribe for more gripping tales.